Welcome to the Successful Life Podcast. I am your host, Corey Barrier, and I'm here with Luis Chapa. What's up, Luis?
What is going on, my man? How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. So, I was going to go ahead and go through the list of different things that Luis does, but I asked him to do it because he's got quite a list of, in my opinion, super cool companies that he runs. And if you've ever talked to Luis, you know that he is the coolest dude, one of the coolest guys I've ever talked to in my life. Like, I think we spent 2 hours on the phone the other night, or on here the other night, which was really just kind of an introduction. But I just want, the audience to know, like, you guys are in for a really, really, really amazing story today. So it's going to be super special, and I'm excited. So Luis, tell us all about, what companies that you or what businesses that you run, and let's just kind of go into your story and some of the things that got you to where you are and all that good stuff.
Yeah, brother, happy to, man, and thanks again for having me on your show. I have to live up to that intro, right? I don't think I'm that cool. But yeah. First of all, I'm a physician by trade. That's kind of where everything stems from. I'm a doctor by trade. My specialty is emergency medicine. And then, as far as the companies go, I'll sort of put them in chronological order in terms of when I started them and became involved. The first one was my medical scribe documentation company called Provider's Choice Scribe Services that I started in 2013.
So what does that do? What do you mind me? Let me just interrupt really quick. Can you just paint a little quick picture of what medical scribe does?
Yeah, so it is actually a really cool job, man. Really cool thing for these kids, and I say kids because the majority of my employees are in their late teens, maybe early 20s, mid 20s at the latest. And what it is these scribes, these employees of mine, is they follow around providers in different various medical settings. So whether it's the emergency room, clinics, specialty clinics, operating rooms, hospitalist settings, that kind of thing. And what they do is they follow the providers, which are the physicians, the nurse practitioners, physician assistants around, and they do all their documentation for them in real time, so that by the time any given provider is done seeing a patient and they walk out of that room, their note is essentially done. So what it does is it allows the provider to be more efficient, more effective, allows them to see more patients, allows them to devote their entire time that they're having that interaction with that patient strictly to that patient, rather than writing down notes or doing a chart and trying to get it done while they're actually at encounter. So it greatly improves the communication between the provider and their patient, and improves the patient experience, because the patient actually feels like the doc or whoever is seeing them is actually listening to them. And so what these scribes do is they do all that documentation again in real time, and are very heavily trained in medical terminology and in all the other jargon that goes on in there. And they do their thing, man. They make our lives as doctors and providers a whole lot easier in the settings that we're in.
You know what I've always often found, back when I owned my personal training company, a lot of my clients were physicians. And so they would often tell me that they would have, stacks of charts at the end of the day that they would have to go through and chart, what happened in the patient with that patient that day, if they prescribe medication, so on and so forth. And I often wonder, like, wow, how do you remember all of, how do you remember that many conversations? Because I think typically right now, a doc, let's just say a primary care physician, I think they see 15-minute increments. So if you do take that over an 8 or 9 hour day, I actually can't do the math. So it's, I don't know, about a lot, 25 clients, 25, 30, 40 patients. And that's a lot of, if you have to go through that stack of patients, that's a lot of stuff to remember.
Well, you're right. It's a crazy amount of stuff to remember. Quite honestly, a lot of shit gets forgotten. or isn't accurately recalled, and so sometimes it's not put into the the chart right when it's done in that setting. And you're right, it's a very big thing. It's one of the biggest bonuses that come from working with a properly trained medical scribe. I actually just had a big meeting this morning with my management team, and one of the things we were talking about was one of our new clients that I brought on probably about a month ago, maybe a little over a month, in a specialty clinic who had never had scribes before. And one of her biggest concerns, or her biggest issues, was that she was seeing patients all day, would finally get out of the office around 6 p.m. and then had to go home and finish her charting for another 2 to 3 hours afterwards. And so, while she was at home, she wasn't really home. And she actually just emailed me this morning saying thank you. And what she was saying was that since we've started with her, she's able to see even more patients than she was seeing before, and is leaving the office by, at the latest, 4 p.m. And when she leaves, she's done. Her work is done at work, and she can actually go home and be present with her family and be involved with her family without having to worry about getting caught up with the documentation that she needed to do for the day's work. And so it's vastly improved her quality of life, improved her flow through her clinic, and is allowing her to see more patients at the same time. So it's cool, man. It's good when I get that kind of feedback. And speaking from personal experience, when I use scribes in the emergency rooms, now I can walk in and any shift and pick up 8 charts at one time, go see all 8 of my patients, come back to my desk, and all my notes are done. And I didn't have to remember every little detail that I spoke with that, patient 1 about by the time that I got finished with patient 8, because my scribe had already documented everything. If I needed to recall it, it was right there for me. I didn't have to sit back and try to figure it out or go re-ask the question. So it's a cool thing, really cool thing for providers. It's a great thing for patients, and it's an amazing thing for these kids, these young adults that are taking on this position, because it gives them such great firsthand experience in the medical field. At least in my company, I tend to hire on those that are more interested in going into something health-wise or health-related. So, most of them are pre-med or, trying to get into nursing school, PA school, nurse practitioner school, dental school. And they tend to get the most out of this kind of a job. And yet essentially they are getting paid to shadow a provider, and get that sort of firsthand experience and firsthand exposure in a real world, real life, real time setting. Which it wasn't around when I was in undergrad, and it would have been a really cool job for me. But it's a great job, and I'm fortunate to have the opportunity and the ability to offer this sort of a position to students.
So it just made me think of something. I think, when you were saying, about the students or the young folks that are in med school or nursing school, it also really reinforces a lot of knowledge for them, if you think about it, because yes, they're getting that experience with the doctor, but then not only that, but they're also writing it down. So I'm sure that, I don't know what the percentage of remembering stuff is when you write it down, but it's pretty high compared to hearing something and not writing it down.
Sure.
So they're getting, an education.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. And when they actually do make that transition into that professional career, that path, it makes it that much easier for them because it's not their first exposure to it, and quite honestly, it a lot of times helps them make the decision on, is this truly something that I want to do for the rest of my life? Is this truly a profession that I want to pursue? Or do I really not like being here and I should choose something else? It's a great thing because it works both ways. It lets those that are really in love with medicine and want to pursue it and reinforce their decision to do that and to commit that type of time and the money that goes into going down that path. But also for those other ones, it allows them to make this decision on, this really isn't what I thought it was going to be, and helps them make that decision to where they can say, hey, you know what? This is a cool job. I love doing it, but medicine just isn't for me. I'd rather go a different track. And imagine how much heartache that saves for those that didn't have that opportunity. They decided to go through the whole track of medicine, and then 8 years down the line, 10 years down the line, they figure out, well, shit, I don't even like this at all. I'd rather do something else. you know, and it saves them that time and still give them a really cool experience.
Well,
You know?
and the money to go to medical school.
Yeah.
Gosh, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you save people 8 to 10 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's that's amazing. All right, so that's just one of the things that you do. So that's super cool, by the way. I think that is super, super, super cool. And I think the more people find out about that, you're going to be bombarded with business.
It's cool, man. It's a fun thing. The company has grown a lot. It's a really cool thing. It's been a lot of fun. You know, that's my baby. That's the one that I started off with on this whole entrepreneur journey. And you know, I made most of my mistakes with that company because it was, you know, again, my first one. And you know, it's taught me a lot about business, a lot about myself, a lot about what I like and what I enjoy. And it's sort of set the tone for everything else that I've done since. And so it's great, man. It's a really cool thing. And I love that company. So
That's awesome. That is awesome. And so, all right, so what's one of the next what's your next one?
yeah, so emergency room that I opened up, they're called freestanding emergency rooms. And so they function just as any emergency room does in a hospital setting, just on its own. And I will only speak for mine because, yeah, that's the only place that I've been in terms of these. But we do things a whole lot quicker, a whole lot faster, and a lot more pleasant environment than you would get in a hospital setting. So I started that company with two partners back at the end of 2015. It's called Prestige Emergency Room. We actually just opened up our third location this past Monday.
Sweet, congratulations.
And had some good patient flow coming in right off the bat. So our locations are all doing really, really good. I have great partners. My two partners that I started this with are great partners. I wouldn't trade them for anybody else. And it's been a great voyage for us going down this emergency room thing. And then, you know, that branched into us opening up our own urgent cares as well. So we have another company called Alamo City Urgent Care here in San Antonio that we've opened up a few locations at that are doing amazing. So yeah, as far as those go, that, you know, those kind of go hand in hand with each other because we just sort of branched off the other one but formed a different company with it.
Sure. I was gonna say I would have been, if you would have had one near me, I would have been your patient this past Saturday.
Yeah.
I got into the sauna, which I do often, at the gym at Lifetime, and dude, I don't know what happened. Like, just completely, I blacked out and passed out in the sauna, and the ambulance had to come and get me. I had no idea. It was the weirdest thing. And next thing I know, I wake up and I'm in the emergency room. Like, no idea. Anyway, that's super cool. So how many urgent cares do you have?
So the urgent cares, we have two urgent cares. So we have 3 emergency rooms, 2 urgent cares now.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay. All right. And so your next one?
The next one is, I'm trying to think what the order is. I guess it would be PC Threads. That's the medical scrub, medical apparel company that I started back in 2018 was when I sort of formed it. Brought on 2 partners to come do this with me. One of them is one of our fellow Arete brothers, Alex Spinoso, Dr. Spinoso, and the other one's a good buddy of mine here in San Antonio with me. The company is based out of here in San Antonio, so all of the shipping, all the handling, everything gets done here. The orders are taken here, all the packaging, and it essentially comes right out of here in San Antonio. Started that one in 2018, but didn't actually open it or launch it until I believe it was August of 19. And it's when we quote unquote went live with the company and introduced it to the world. So my last one is a company called Chocolazzo. It's a chocolate company here in San Antonio, and that is the one that I kind of came into that was already established. I didn't actually start that one, which is different from all my other companies. But Chocolazzo is a really cool. It's a cool chocolate company, man. I don't eat a lot of sweets, but it's a really cool thing. It's fun being involved with it. It was started by a good buddy of mine and his wife, Frank and Mary Colazzo, and that's where the name comes from, Chocolazzo. And so, so yeah. But yeah, I'm always a big proponent of investing in yourself before you invest in somebody else. I'm just fortunate enough to be at the point where I can invest in other people or other things now. But that was sort of my first go down that alley with investing in somebody else. And one of the main reasons that I did that is because I trusted Frank a lot. You know, Frank and I met back in, gosh, I want to say 2012 or so, working fights together. It's another thing that I do is I work fights here in Texas. But he and I were working fights together. And right when I was starting my Scribe company, he was starting his chocolate company. He was doing it as the only dessert food truck in San Antonio. And so we were kind of going through the growing pains of having a brand new company and never done one before, me on the Scribe end, him on the chocolate end. And every time we would meet at fights, we would talk about different issues we were having, different wins we were having, that kind of stuff. And when I opened up my first emergency room, I used his truck as for our grand opening, and they gave treats out at our spot. And afterwards, I met him again, and I said, hey man, if y'all are ever interested in expanding, let me know if you like to bring on a partner and go from there. So they hit me up, man. We have 2 brick and mortars now here in San Antonio in very affluent locations that are doing really, really good. Our media's really cool because it's so different from anything that I do. I have photo shoots for my scrubs. We have photo shoots for our chocolates, and so it's way different. We have taking pictures and desserts taking pictures as opposed to me having live people taking pictures. And it's a lot easier with the chocolates.
Sure.
I'll tell you right now, it's a really cool thing. So it's been a lot of fun.
So what kind of chocolate, what makes the chocolate different? What makes it good? What makes it different?
So, our chocolatier is Mary. Mary is again, one of the owners, Frank's wife. And she's the one that did all the sort of training to get into this position, to create it. Our main sellers right now, our big thing is our truffles. We sell various types of flavored truffles that she gets very creative with in terms of the flavoring that comes with them and the markings on them that make them so visually appealing. But we also have other desserts as well. We have different sort of moon pies or oatmeal cream pies and just different things like that, different kinds of cakes that they make. All stuff that I honestly don't know much about and didn't know much about until I got into the company. And even still, man, I go back there and I'll watch her work and she does her magic and I'm like, blown away with it. So it's just a really cool thing, man. I love having those talks with Frank when we meet in terms of business talks, because it's a different kind of talk. It's a different kind of, strategizing, as opposed to me strategizing for my Scribe company or strategizing for the emergency rooms or even for the scrubs or the urgent cares. It's very different when we're talking about selling chocolate to people in San Antonio, throughout the country. But it's a very cool thing to be able to have my experience and share it with Frank and Mary in terms of, well, how do we, which way do we go to make Chocolazzo as successful as they can be? And, Mary's the heart of the company. She's the backbone of the company. Frank is right there with her, and I'm just lucky enough to be involved with it. So it's cool.
So you said you've got a couple of brick and mortars with the chocolate store. Do you also do online or how? Or
we do online. We're actually doing a big online thing this year. We just had a big talk about it recently. As far as this year, that being our aim, because the brick and mortars are doing so well that it's time for us to be able to branch out and devote a little bit more time and funding into creating a heavier online presence.
Very cool. But people can order it now online.
Yeah.
Okay, you're just not heavily promoting it online.
Right, we're not heavily promoting it yet.
Okay, cool. All right, so you mentioned the fights. You got to hit on that for a moment, because I think a lot of people listening I think that's super cool. Not that the other things are not.
Yeah, that's fun, man. That's just there's really no other way to put it other than that's some fun shit to do. I've been a big fan of combative sports since I can remember, and did a lot of training with Muay Thai and that kind of stuff, and I went to I was doing Muay Thai training in medical school, and then once residency started, it was a little too busy for me to be able to bring that into my current schedule. And I had actually gone to watch one of my friends fight at a local fight where I was training. And I was sitting there in the stands, and I saw these two docs that were down ringside. And I said, well, shit, I wonder if I could do that, you know, or they'll let me do that. So after those fights, I contacted one of them, and I said, hey, man, you know, I'm Luis Chapa. I'm an ER resident here in town. I'd love to shadow you. Would you be okay with me shadowing you? This dude told me no. And he just straight up said, I want you here. And I saw, badass. So I called the other doctor, right? So I called the other guy, same pitch. Told him, hey, man, you know, I'm an ER resident here in town. I'd love to shadow you. I'm really interested in the sports. And he said, yeah, man, come on. Yeah, next one we have, you're more than welcome to be there with me. And so then from there, it just kind of bloomed, man. It, you know, the state got really comfortable with me being there. They realized that with my specific emergency medicine training, I was very well equipped to handle essentially anything and everything that happened there in the ring and outside of the ring. And so they started calling me specifically. I got a license here in the state to be a licensed ringside physician. And then they just started calling me. I started this back in 2008, so I've been doing it for a decent amount of time. And now they call me for, you know, the bigger fights as well. Here in Texas, I just finished working the last UFC fight, the last pay-per-view fight that came about 2 weeks ago to Houston. I'm leaving this weekend to go do a boxing pay-per-view match up in Dallas at the new Cowboys training facility. So it's cool, man. It's a lot of fun. I get to do, you know, talk with the fighters one-on-one when I do their physicals the day before the fights. I'm there the day of the fights, ringside with them. If I need to get called into the ring, they'll call me into the ring. Otherwise, I'll see them after the fights in the back, away from everybody else, and just go from there. So it's cool. A lot of fun.
I bet. So what, you know, what's the most common thing that you see, you know, during these fights? Let's just say the UFC, because that's probably a little more, I don't know the right term, brutal or whatever. What do you see what is the most common thing that you see that you have to look for to make a decision on whether this person should continue or not?
So if you're talking about during the fights, yeah, so during the fights, if they get into the ring, usually that's what they're asking, right? Can this guy continue? Can he not continue? Most of the time when they call you in there for that, it's because they have a cut somewhere on their face that they're saying, is it bad enough? Is it obstructing their vision enough that they can't continue? I need you to make that call, you know? And so I'll go in there, see where it's at, see where it's located. There's a lot of things that kind of go into that decision.
Sure.
What's affecting? Is it affecting their vision? If it is affecting their vision, then pretty much hands down, the fight's going to end up getting called, because if it's affecting their vision, then it's not a fair fight, you know? And it becomes dangerous for the fighter even more so than, you know, than just being in there in general. Outside of the ring, you know, when I see them after the fights, that's when I have to make the decision. Is this guy okay for me to just check him out here? He can go to his locker room and then they can go home afterwards, and they can fly wherever they got to fly to go back home. Or does this guy actually need to go to the hospital right now? Do we got to send him in the ambulance to go get seen over there? You know, most of the injuries that we see there are, I mean, obviously there's head injuries, you know, they get hit in the head, a lot of that kind of stuff. There's broken bones. They need to get evaluated. We need to get x-rays on to see if they are fractured. Lacerations are a big thing, especially in MMA. You'd be surprised. I actually get probably more lacerations in boxing than I do with MMA. The reason for that, or the reason I think for that, is because generally in boxing, you're getting pounded in the face nonstop the entire time. You know, it's most of the times that's where you're getting hit, is in the face. But with MMA, there's so many other ways for you to lose or for you to win a fight. You know, there's submissions, there's your ground game, there's all this kind of stuff. You're not essentially just losing because you're getting knocked out. You can lose in other ways as well, you know.
Sure.
And so, granted, I get lacerations in both. It's just, I think probably the ones that I've had the most have always been in boxing. You know, they got those guys, especially when I'm working pro fights or the bigger fights, they've been doing it for quite some time, and they got a lot of scar tissue that splits the skin very easily, and so it happens.
Yeah. Wow. So, do you have a preference of which one you like being ringside than the other, boxing or the MMA?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of both, but I would have to lean more towards MMA.
Yeah.
I'm just a bigger fan of that sport. You know, when I'm there as a physician, I'm not there as a fan, even though it's really cool being there. It's really cool seeing these guys that you only see on TV and talking to them. But you know, when I'm there, it's a job, and I got to be there to take care of them, make sure that everybody's health is you know sort of my biggest interest at that time. So it is a job. Even when I'm there, it's a job. You know, I mean, there's stuff that I got to think about. There's stuff that I got to take into account. You know, when I'm there and making these decisions. But you know, as far as being a fan, I'm a bigger fan of MMA than I am of boxing, even though I love boxing.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. My best friend he loves MMA, and I think I may have told you this. He hosts a fight at this bar in Atlanta every time there's a pay-per-view fight. And like, you know, I never really got into it. I don't know why. I just didn't. But I've always found it super interesting, especially with Conor McGregor, and I'll tell you why. It's not because not because of his record or whatever, but his mindset. His mindset's so different, I think, than a lot of the other guys, and I think that's why he's won as many times as he's won.
No, you're right, man. You got to be confident going in there. I think most fighters are confident. Just some are very confident in their capabilities and their training, and regardless of how much they talk, or regardless of how you know this sort of persona that they give off to everybody, you can generally tell who truly believes in themselves and who's really worried about that fight. You know, and you know Connor. You know, love him or hate him, Connor's a great fighter. He really is. You know, I mean, he made it to the top because he's a great fighter. He probably got there a little quicker than most people because he talks a great game too, and he sells tickets. But he's a great fighter, and you know, I think he kind of, as far as his mindset goes, I think his mindset kind of went away from what got him there, and that's when he started having all the issues recently with all the other stuff that had been going on in his life. But if you see his last fight that he had against Cowboy, you know, he had talked about having a different mindset going into it. He's, you know, he's back to what got him there, that kind of thing. But if you look at who was in the ring after that fight, aside from his family and his coaches and his team, that guy had Tony Robbins there, man. And I think that probably made a world of difference when, you know, he was getting back on the right track of being who he needed to be to get him back to where he wanted to be. And it was getting in that right mindset of his. And, you know, leading up to that fight, he didn't talk a lot of shit because he has a lot of respect for Cowboy, but he was very, very confident in what was going to happen and how quick it was going to happen. And it happened quick. So he, you know, he did his thing. He's a good guy. And I think his mind is probably back now where it needs to be for him to get back to where, you know, he once was.
Sure. You know, I often wonder, like, I often wonder, like, what are the implications down the road for these guys that have been kicked and hit that many times? I mean, you just take one fight, right? I mean, I can't imagine how many times to get kicked and hit in the face and the head. But then somebody that's had a career like Connor or whoever, how does that implicate their life down the road?
Yeah, you know, so if you're talking specifically about MMA compared to like boxing,
Well, I don't know, just both, maybe.
Well, yeah, you know, but MMA is still very much in its infancy, right, compared to the duration that boxing has been around. And so when people want to do studies on what's more dangerous, you know, is boxing more dangerous, is MMA more dangerous? It's hard to compare the two because they haven't been around the same amount of time. You know, if you look at boxing, yeah, I mean, there are long-term effects that come from it, right? I mean, it's just like football. There's long-term effects from getting hit like that and getting concussions. You look at Muhammad Ali, right? I mean, Muhammad Ali had Parkinson's, and they, you know, a lot of the experts thought that it was due to the repetitive trauma that he was having to his head, and you know, repetitive brain trauma from all his fights. And it is a dangerous sport. I mean, you hear fighters, I mean, unfortunately, you hear about those fighters that do pass away in the ring from just getting that perfect hit that caused something to happen, caused them to get a bleed and too much swelling, and they couldn't be saved. It truly is a dangerous sport. And I think the sort of end result on what happens down the line, I think it's probably going to be pretty close to hand in hand with the same trauma that, again, football players have. It's just that's been around a whole lot longer than MMA has, and so it's easier to be studied, and it's easier to say, oh, this was caused by CTE, or it wasn't caused by CTE, or he acted like this because of the damage that was done in the years past. And I think it's a risk that these athletes take, and they know going into it very well what can happen down the line. But I mean, it kind of goes with anything, right? If you want it bad enough, you're willing to accept the sacrifice, or willing to make the sacrifices and to accept the consequences that come with it, right? I mean, it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to compare having some sort of huge medical problem to the shit we go through with business, but I mean, it's any decision that you make, if you want it bad enough, like, if you want to be an entrepreneur bad enough, well, you're going to have to accept the consequences of, things can be great, or they can be shit, or it's going to be anywhere in between, and you're going to get both, and that's the way that it goes. I mean, it's almost like with me, when I had that sort of epiphany of, when I decided I was going to start doing something, it was a risk. It was a risk, and it was a monetary risk, and it was, I mean, you and I had that talk on, how I started and the shit that I went through for that first company. That's why I say it's my baby, because it put me through the most shit. But it's just sort of a calculated risk that you take going into it, and I think that's what these athletes do. I mean, they love the sport, they love the competition that comes with it, and the journey of trying to get to the top, and they take that risk.
Sure. So I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about a little bit about some of the things that you did go through starting, the first company, and the risks that you took, and the the shit, and the great, the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah, man. And that's what I think is probably the most fun part, is the journey. It's not really the end result. It's weird because, you'll work and work and work to get a contract or to get some sort of a customer, and it finally happens, and then it's like, all right, great, let's work for the next one. It's not really a big celebration. It's everything that led up to it that actually meant more, And yeah, starting off, man, I was fresh out of residency, so I hadn't even been out practicing on my own for a year. I was 6 months out of residency, just finished graduating, moved up to San Antonio, and was working in the emergency rooms. And I remember I was working, it was a Christmas Eve. It was Christmas Eve, it was a night shift, and I was in one of the busiest yards here in San Antonio. And I was getting my ass kicked, man. I was the only doc in that ER, and it was sick patient after sick patient, nonstop. It was a relentless night. And I remember I had to take a 2-minute break to go take a leak. And I remember looking in the mirror thinking, man, I'm here busting my ass doing this, and the guy that owns this company is at home asleep right now, and he's going to enjoy Christmas tomorrow morning because, when he wakes up with his family, he's going to be there with his family, and I'm here busting my ass for his company. I'm making a good living, but I'm not making his living right now. And so I remember I went home that morning on Christmas morning, and before the kids got up, I told my wife, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to figure out some way where I don't have to work for somebody else the rest of my life. I'm going to do something that's going to let me make those decisions. I don't know when it'll happen, but it's going to happen. And, that's when I started the first company. So that was probably in the end of 2010. And I started my first company in 2013 was when I actually launched it. And I believe it was in maybe April of May of 13. And I did not get my first customer until February of 14. And between that time, man, I was still a full-time physician, still working my shifts in the emergency rooms throughout town. But if there was ever a potential customer that was coming along and agreed to meet with me, And if I had a shift scheduled to work that day, well, then it was, I can't pass up this potential customer, or they're going to tell me no, but I got to go there and try. And man, I would have to pay somebody that worked in the ER with me, one of the other docs. I'd say, hey man, you know, I got a shift on this day. I'll pay you $2,000 to work it. They would say, okay. So then I would pay them $2,000 to work that shift, but miss out on the, you know, potential $3,000 for working the shift that I gave up, all to go meet with a customer that more than likely was going to end up telling me, you know. And man, I did that for forever. And that affected me, because to make up for that shift, I would have to pick up an additional one, which meant that I wasn't going to be at home with my family, more so because I was picking up an extra day to make up for the day that I was out trying to go make my first customer, or get a first customer for that scribe company. And I think I told you before, man, you know, it was an eye opener for me, because, you know, before going down that entrepreneur journey, I was never told no, ever, you know, in terms of, you know, this gradual progress of life, right, and being a profession. It was, you know, okay, you want to go to medical school, you got to do great in undergrad, right? Got into medical school, first year applied, great. Got into medical school, okay, well now you got to do great, because you're going to go into residency. And if you want to get into a competitive residency, you have to do great in medical school. Did great in medical school, got into my residency, right? Residency, you do your thing, you put in your time, it's fucking time. You put in your time, and you're already a physician, so you're already kind of giving orders, even though at least at the very beginning, you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're still giving your orders. And then you finish, and then boom, all of a sudden you're a doctor out in the real world, done with all your training. Every order that you give, you know, with, you know, maybe some exceptions, is okay. Yeah, that's your order. It's going in. Nobody ever told me no, right? It was just boom. I did this, just progress. Then I got to the whole entrepreneur thing. I'm gonna start my first company. Well, fuck, it sure didn't go as easy as this. You know, and but you know, those no's were probably more important than all the yeses that I got, you know, because those no's trained me to get that thick skin, to get that, bring that determination and will out to succeed, at least in this realm, more than anything else. And you know, I still get told no, but I get told yes a whole lot more than I get told no now, you know. And so it's been a long journey, and that's the part that a lot of people don't see. Nobody sees it, right? I mean, I really don't ever tell that story about me having to pay people and pretty much essentially being out $5,000 to go talk to somebody that was going to tell me no anyways for my scribe company. But man, I don't know how many times I did that, how much money I paid out doing that. It had to at least been 20 times that I did that. And you know, it's a real thing. It's a real struggle. It's rough. And you know, not only does that whole entrepreneur thing affect you, and that journey affect you, but then it affects your family. And you know, you either have to adapt and you know, put in the work that needs to get done to make it happen. And it's those that truly believe it's just going to come to them that fucking fail, you know. And it's those that are able to grind it out and have that grit that will succeed. And it's those other ones that just can't stomach it. That won't. Not that there's anything wrong with it. You know, I mean, you know, this whole thing is some people are built for it. Some people are okay with putting up all those, or going through all those risks, and you know, making the sacrifices and sacrificing your family for it. And some people just aren't, and they're happy with things being however they want to be. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you know, who are you?
Right. Right. Well, and you know, you hit on something that's super important, is that, you know, your family, you know, you can't be a successful, I shouldn't say you can't, maybe you can. I don't know a lot of successful entrepreneurs that at some point their family life didn't take a hit, or their kids didn't take a hit, because, you know, I'm sure you've read the book, Tim Grover's Relentless. Yep. And he talks about explicitly in there that if you're going to be a cleaner, that something is always going to be affected. It's either your wife or your kids or whatever. Something you're going to have to trade something up if you want that. And I think that's what you're talking about. So how was, how did it affect were you married at this time? I assume you were.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
We got
And
married in 3. Yeah. But yeah, man, it affected everybody, and if you think about, who had it rough or who had it the worst, and you think about it that way, it's different. It's different for everybody. It's different for everybody that went through it. When you talk, let's talk about the emergency rooms. When we started that when I started that with my 2 partners, it was rough, man, and nobody really wanted to take a chance on us because it was just us 3, right? So no bank wanted to give us a loan. It's a multi-million-dollar loan. Nobody wanted us to have their property or build on their property or use their building because they didn't trust the model. It was a new thing. Until one bank, finally said yes to us, but part of our agreement was we would not pay ourselves, and I say we, myself, my 2 partners, we would not pay ourselves a penny until we could pay ourselves a penny. So that working capital for us wasn't in the loan that we were able to get from this bank. And so what that meant was, not only did it's an emergency room, so it's a 24/7 facility. Not only did one of us have to be there all the time, but we still had to work somewhere to make money, and feed the family and pay the bills, that kind of thing. And so when we first started, man, what we ended up doing, and it worked out better for us because it allowed us to make money, is that we would do 96-hour shifts. So, if I went in on a Monday morning, I wouldn't get out until Friday morning. And I didn't get out. I was at my facility 24 hours a day for those 96 hours, eating, sleeping, if we could sleep, and seeing patients and trying to get some exercise in time. But what that did is that allowed us, when we got out, to have 8 days off. 8 days where we could actually go work somewhere else and make money. I just didn't, not making any money. And I still needed to make money. And so I would generally work about at least 7 out of those 8 days in the hospital around town, picking up shifts, so that I could still pay my bills at home, still feed my family. And so we did that for about 18 months, for a year and a half, where we didn't pay ourselves a penny. And we essentially worked every day of the year. And really, people say, "Oh, I work all the time." That's great, right? And there's nothing wrong with people saying that, whether they mean it or not, whatever. But this was real fucking work in the emergency room for 18 months straight, and we never saw our families, man. The only time we would see our kids was if they stopped by while we were at our ER so that they could have dinner with us for 10 minutes, and then they would leave, and that was when I got to see my kids. I missed out on a whole bunch of shit, and I always say that the ones that probably got it the worst, that they probably don't realize, are my kids. And I think I told you this too, is that people ask me all the time, what's it like to own your own companies and to be a doctor and own these things? And I always tell them, it's this whole journey is full of firsts. This entrepreneur journey is full of firsts, but it's not really the first that you think of, right? It's not really the first that you even look forward to at all. It's the first time that you're going to miss a school function. It's the first time that you're not going to be home on a holiday. It's the first time that your family goes on a vacation without you because you're too busy trying to grow your business. It's the first time you don't get to make it to a birthday party because that's when I'm scheduled to work and my partner's already put in their time and we don't have other people to cover for, so I got to be there. It's those kinds of things that you take for granted until you're hit with it. And it's my kids that, I don't want to say they got used to me not being there, but they accepted that, sometimes I wasn't going to be there. And even now, sometimes I can't be there because I got to do something for the companies or one of them. And it's just, it's different, man, and it's not stuff that I look forward to, but it was a necessary, that has allowed me to get to the point that I'm at now. And allowed me to provide the type of life that we're in now, that I continue to only hope to get better. But even still, I go to a lot of my boys or my kids' practices now that I missed a whole fuckload of them on. Mm-hmm. My kids' teams thought they didn't have a dad, because I was never there. I could never make the games. I could never make practice. Could never do anything. But now, even now, I'll show up to, let's say, my son's soccer practice, and I'll be there, but I may have to be on the phone. I may have to
Right.
take a call in the middle of your practice, but I'm there, and I'll see you. And that's just stuff that, a lot of people can't stomach, or they don't really want to deal with, and those are the ones that are very happy with the sort of life that they have right now, whether it's, it's working for whatever company they've worked with forever, or doing whatever they do and kind of having that life. But it's just not me to accept that, and to sort of just be that sort of standard life. It's just not me. And again, I don't think it's wrong for somebody to want that. But if you want more, then you got to be able to put in that work and that sacrifice more than other people will. So, yeah, man, it's been fun. Like I said, it's a journey, right? It's a journey of a whole bunch of ups and downs. And, I think that, I think my journey is, I don't think I'm special in any way. I don't think anything that I do is special. It's just what works for me. But I think that my journey of becoming a physician, and especially having my specialty and my exposure in that specialty, has allowed me to put a lot into perspective in this business world, or this business journey, to where, maybe I don't get as, as stressed out as other people may get. And maybe I don't, let things bother me as that may bother somebody else more in the same position. And I think it's just from the exposure that I've had and the stuff that I've had to deal with and go through with the medicine part of it and my specialty, again, that allows me to put a lot of stuff into perspective.
Sure. Well, I think this is super important because, when people go into business for themselves, entrepreneurs, and, they think it's very different than the reality of what it really is. Unless your father handed you the keys to the front door and said, "Hey, the place is paid off. I just need you to run it. It's yours." All right. And people have, there are people that happens, not a lot, or maybe it's more than I think, but I don't know, but one or two people that's happened to, and they probably don't really understand the struggle. But when you decide to go out on your own, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. I mean, that's all there is to it. And it looks like from the outside, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? And I had no idea what it was really like, because I just thought being an entrepreneur or a business owner, that just mean you made a whole lot of money and you got to, make your own hours and all that. You don't make your own hours, first of all. The money is, man, you may or may not make money. That's for sure. But it's not as luxurious as people think it is. I mean, maybe it gets to that point, but then you got to step back and say, well, really does it? Because if your mindset is like mine or yours, you never are really satisfied with just the one clinic or just the one hospital or just the one company. There's always that hunger for, what else can I do? How many more people can I help by starting this other brand? It depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
But
And Ed Milet says it very well when he talks about blissful dissatisfaction, right? And before I heard that, and before I got into Arete, really, I just thought that I was fucking weird. That maybe there was something wrong with me, that I was never going to be satisfied, or I was never going to be happy. And I think it's important to understand that you can be happy and still want more. Be happy with where you're at. I'm happy with where my scribe company is. I am, because we've done amazing, but I want it to be more. I'm happy with the ERs that we've built, but I want us to have more. And I think it's that state that allows you, that separates those that are destined to be great and those are destined just to be okay. It's what separates the cleaners from the closers. It's what separates the top 1% and the top 1% of the 1%. It's sort of that mindset that you have to have. And and after being in the group and reading the books, and actually it was Tim Grover's book that I read that actually made me realize, well, shit, maybe I am different. I'm not special, by any means, but I am different. Yeah? And I'm different in terms of what I'm willing to do, what I'm willing to sacrifice, and what I'm willing to go through, whether that's good or bad, because, it's, especially if you're different and from your spouse in that aspect.
Oh my God, you read my mind. That is exactly where I was going.
It's very different, and there's nothing wrong with you being that way, but you also need to understand that other people aren't, and
Right.
I think that's probably one of the biggest things or issues or obstacles that I've had is that, my wife isn't that way, and so it's very hard for her to see my point on it and to see what I see. And it's very hard for me to see where she's at with being happy with whatever. But it's a give and take kind of thing. And be honest with you, it's more take from my end than anything else, because I won't stop.
Right.
I just can't.
Right.
And it's not in me to stop.
Sure.
And that's why I've done these other things. And I'm willing to take risks, and I'm willing to put in the work, and I'm willing to not sleep. And it's just, because quite honestly, yeah, it can be hard. It can be. But like I said, the shit that I've gone through with the medicine really puts everything into perspective, where it's not that hard for me. It's not that big of a deal for me. If something doesn't work out or it doesn't happen, it could always be worse. I mean, we had that talk.
Yeah, we did.
We had that talk, and it could always be worse. And I think those that can see that are the ones that continue to grow, and the ones that can't grow.
That's true. And I think, I think it takes a special, you better be really, your spouse better be really in love with you if you're an entrepreneur, because they're going to take a lot of the shit, because when things are not going so great, guess what? You may have to depend on them to pick up part of the slack, or on the flip side, which is really, I don't know if one's worse than the other, but you've got then they have to take care of the family when things are in full swing. So, you, if you're marrying or you're, in a relationship with somebody who's got the mindset like you and I, that you have to do more, you have to keep digging, because it's almost like you just have that internal fire inside of you that you do want more. And it doesn't have anything to do with the money, right? It's not that you want more money. I want to pile up all this money. It's, granted, the money is great, but it's something else. There's a different part inside of you that other folks don't have. And that's nothing bad, nothing wrong with it that they don't have that, or that they do. But it's just different, and it's hard to explain to somebody who doesn't have it. You know what I mean?
It is hard to explain, and it's hard to try to. It's a losing battle when you're trying to make somebody see something that you see but they don't see. And you can spit it out until you turn blue in the face, and they're still not going to see it. They may say that they see and they understand, but they don't understand, because that's just not the way they're geared, right? It's just the way that I'm not geared to be complacent and to be, satisfied with the status quo. I may say, fine, that's you. But in my head, I'm thinking, fuck, I don't do that. That's not me. I don't understand how you can be like that. It's just different, man. And not that one person is better than the other. It's different. It's just how we're wired, and we're geared a little different, And, shit happens. You're right. When shit hits the fan, and everybody has to deal with it. But when things go great, everybody reaps from it too, And
That's right.
And that's why I always say, regardless of how bad it gets with this whole entrepreneur shit, and, you name it, I've been through it with entrepreneurship, and I'm very blessed right now. Things are going great, and I'm doing amazing. It's great, but there's always stuff that goes wrong, but things can always be worse. Things can always, and I've been there for the worst. I've been there in those bad times, with the whole medicine thing, that I know shit can always be worse. So you always have to at least see the positive side of it, at least see, keep that positive mindset and everything, because, it's, things can change, man, and missing out on a contract, or somebody telling you no, or somebody fucking up at work on site. It's not that bad. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that bad, man.
Nope. And lots of times, you may be missing that contract or not getting it. That may, and quite honestly, probably was the best thing that could have happened for you. It just doesn't seem like it at the time.
I don't know, right? I mean, you don't know, and the cards aren't always in your hand. They're not always in your favor, and maybe it's for a reason.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's just hard to see that sometimes.
Yeah.
So
it's just different, man. Like I said, I think that my training just has allowed me to make it, at least maybe selfishly, it's giving me an easier go in terms of going down this entrepreneur thing, right? And like I said when we last talked, I've been there at those times when I've had to tell parents, or I've had to tell this mom or tell this dad that they're never going to take their kid home again. That they're never their baby open their eyes again, because even though I did everything that I could do for them, I wasn't able to save them, right? And same thing where, I got to tell the mom, the dad, the grandpa, the brother, the sister, that the last time they saw their brother, the last time they saw their grandpa, the last time they saw their grandma was the last time they're going to see them. And it's just, it's different, man. Oh, got this dude here.
What's up, buddy?
Yeah. He stayed home from school today. He was playing hooky.
Well, every now and then it's okay.
Yeah. So, it's different, man. And I, like I said, that kind of stuff, those kind of experiences where I've had to have those talks with these families is what really puts everything in perspective, especially in this business world where I know shit can be a whole lot worse. And this, whatever it is that I'm going through with this company, it's not that bad. Regardless of how bad it seems, it could always be a whole lot worse. And so you just got to deal with it.
That's absolutely true. So so Luis, we'll wrap up. This has been such an impactful conversation, dude. Like, every time I've talked to you has been super impactful. You're such a great dude to talk to. Where can people find you on social? And Kenny, if you don't mind, where can they find your companies, your scrubs, especially, just name out all the places, or one place where they can go, they can find all the stuff.
Yeah, so they're not all really listed in one specific location. I'm not really active too much on media, but I do have an Instagram thing that I'll post shit that I think is cool every once in a while. I'll post the UFC stuff, that kind of thing. And that handles at LC4th, so LC4TH. But the companies themselves all have their own websites. The scrub company, PC Threads, is www.pcthredz.com. So it's threads spelled THREDZ. And then each individual company has their own thing. Provider choice scribe services, prestige emergency room, chocolazzo, that kind of stuff.
That's awesome, dude.
Really easy to find. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, where does most, I don't even know why I didn't ask this earlier, but the chocolate, does it come from different, can you have different countries? What kind of,
our stuff, and to get into the specifics of that, I'd actually have to talk to Mary, because she's told me a few times and it just goes over my head, but there's a specific farming community that we get our chocolate from that we were very fortunate to get in with, because we actually got some of the very first what's called ruby chocolate, and so it almost looks like strawberry dyed chocolate, but that's the way it's actually made. It comes with a different flavor to it. It's almost like a naturally occurring white chocolate. How white chocolate has that special flavor to it. It's like that, but this truly is not modified at all. That's just the way the cocoa beans came, and that's how it's produced, and it comes out pink. Really
wow.
Cool. And the company that we deal with and get our chocolates from, or our cocoa from, is one of the very few in the entire world that is able to produce that.
That's cool.
We're one of the few companies that actually has. A lot of the other ones, like even some of the big name brands that you'll see out there, they'll try to market, we have it too. Well, they really don't. What they do is they modify it and they dye their chocolate so it looks like that, but it's not really that. Very different.
Wow. That's super cool, dude. That's really, really cool. And one more time, Chocolazzo, is that the name of it?
Yeah, Chocolazzo.
Chocolato. Okay, cool. That's awesome. That is super awesome. I will have to, and people can order that online, right?
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Super cool. Well, Lewis, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me your time today. The listeners are going to love the shit out of this, period. I mean, I know they will. And thank you. I really appreciate it.
All right, brother. I'm glad I could be on, man.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
You too, brother. Thank you.
Yes, sir.